I've been seeing something. It started a few months ago when my mom and I arrived at her house late at night around 2 a.m. I had driven her home from the hospital when my dad was recovering from surgery. My parents live out in the middle of nowhere in rural Oklahoma, near Muddy Boggy River. I'm not making that name up. Google it if you want. I parked the car and she immediately ran into the house to use the bathroom while I gathered up all of our stuff. I guess she really had to go because she didn't turn the porch light on for me. As I got to the door, I sensed something looking at me to my left. When I looked, I saw what I've come to call the flesh monster. It looked like a very tall man wearing a sheet over his head, the way a child would when they pretended to be a ghost. Only, instead of a sheet, it looked like he was draped in skin. It sagged down around his arms and pooled around his feet. The head of this thing looked similar to the boogeyman in The Nightmare Before Christmas, just indentations where eyes should be. It was just standing on the edge of the porch, watching me. After I managed to unfreeze myself from the terror, I dropped everything I was holding, ran inside, locked the door, and flipped on the porch light. It was gone. I told my mom about it immediately, and strangely enough, she didn't question me. She believed me instantly. I guess it was easy to see the real fear in my eyes. I've seen it twice more since then. Once standing inside the chicken house around 3 months ago. I ran inside to get my mom and the gun, but it was gone by the time we got back outside. Then again, last night, I saw it standing out in the field behind their house. In that direction, my parents own 20 acres of land. The field turns into woods that run all the way down to the river. It watched me for what felt like an hour, and then slowly raised its arms, although they looked more like deformed bat wings, and its head skyward. It was the gesture you see in the church when someone has the Holy Ghost and reaches up to the Lord. Then it suddenly snapped its head back down to my face, and I noped right the fuck out of there. It was so unnatural in the way that it moved. I only see it late at night when I'm alone, the last 2 times while I was smoking. There is a legend about the Boogie Creek Monster around my hometown, but I always thought they were talking about Bigfoot. I was wondering if anyone else has seen anything like this. I'm afraid of it. It's never came nearer than 10 feet away from me, but I feel like it wants something. What it wants, I couldn't say. In my town, in Southern California, there is a small burned down house in a desert field. The story goes that a young girl died there, and she walks around and can sometimes be seen at night. The area is completely dark, but is illuminated by the moon on certain nights. There is an abandoned boat and rubble everywhere where the house once stood. It is surrounded by trees, and what used to be a barn barely stands. All that remains is the skeleton of the building. One night, in 2012, I convinced my skeptic friend to find the ghost. It was a chilly February night, and we made it there at about 8 p.m. After a 30-minute drive to the middle of nowhere where the place is located. We got out of the car. The feeling of discomfort nearly engulfed us. Suddenly, we heard a giggle and froze with fear. We had just literally walked about 100 feet from my car, and we were surrounded by bushes and rubble in the middle of nowhere where the property would be. My friend pointed. We could see the shadow of a young girl, very short. She began to run. My friend ran, crying. I stood there, frozen in fear, then followed suit. When we got back to the car, I could no longer see her, but hear her, singing a melody. No words, just a melody. It filled the air. I got in the car and sped off, the gas station back in town, where we went to get snacks, we found small handprints all over my car. A friend later elaborated on the story and told me the ghost was that of a little girl who died there in a fire in the 1970s. Allison, my 11-year-old daughter, and I had been preparing the cookie dough for the last 20 minutes to go into the oven. Her dark brown eyes and hair matched my own. We had always been close, as two peas in a pod, but cooking was the one thing we found extra enjoyment in doing together. All the ingredients for the mint chocolate chip cookies had been added, ready to be put in the oven. We turned and smiled at each other. Her smile seemed to reach from ear to ear. Her teeth seemed to glisten abnormally bright in the fluorescent lights. For some reason, I felt extra giddy, just happier than I had ever felt. I can't express the pure joyous bliss that engulfed me for those long moments. The peace, the silence between us was broken by frantic ringing the front doorbell. It was one of those new bells. Via an app, it was connected directly to my cell phone, which allowed me to not only see them, the live video feed, but also reply. The voice function never worked properly. Oh, how I wish it did at that exact moment. I had more than a few choice words for whomever had broken our peaceful, euphoric moment, whoever disturbed our perfect peace. It continued, non-stop, sounding more and more like a scream for attention. I angrily reached, fumbling for my cell, and yanked it forth. I could not wait to see the idiot, the moron, the outright fool who would continuously ring my bell in such a disrespectful manner. The pace quickens, and it blurred into one long, panicking ring. My angered, furious face looked towards my cell. I tapped the corresponding app, and then the anger fell away from my face as I turned pale, not capable of understanding, which quickly turned to fear. Allison? Was the only word that slipped my lips as I saw the fear-covered face of my daughter. She held up a sign, scribbled on a dampened piece of cardboard, and my fear turned into sheer terror as I read the 3 words in all caps written upon it. That's not me.